Hi, folks. Welcome to this episode of the Alix Mayer Show. Today's guest is attorney Nicole Pearson, who is a human rights and civil rights constitutional attorney who saw what was going on when we got locked down, and she wanted to do something about it. You are going to love this conversation. We did it as a live webinar because this is part of our Legal Warriors Club access. So next time I interview an attorney, I hope that you join us live as well. And if you don't know about AB 495, you've got to tune in until the end and hear everything you need to know to protect your children now. So welcome to the show. The Alix Mayer Show is sponsored by Mish International, gold and silver specialists since 1963. When you need protection from monetary inflation and leveraged assets exposure, you contact the dedicated people at Mish International. Mish International, a family business, offers true expertise, integrity, reliability, and fair pricing of gold and silver. Visit their website at mishinternational.com. That's MISH international.com. Nicole Pearson, welcome to the Alix Mayer Show. I'm so excited to have you here today and to talk to you about all sorts of medical freedom, legal, and policy issues in California, because you are one of the leading voices in California. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. I love you and I love Free Now Foundation. I'm just grateful to be here. All the work you guys are doing. We're doing.
I want to just touch on your background a little bit because I think everybody knows you for what you do now, but they don't know very much about where you got your law degree or how you came to be an expert in medical freedom law. So could you just talk about your background and how you got here today?
Well, I've always been passionate about the law and what's fair and what's true. And, my friends know me, my family knows me. I'd rather know the truth than have any sort of ambiguity or, that lack of clarity. And what's right, is wrong is wrong. And, even if I don't like it, and that's something I teach my kids, even if I don't like it, that's just what's right. And that's what we do. So that's just something that I'm grateful that my family and my parents instilled in me. And then going to law school, obviously there are ways that you can argue the facts for your cases, but the law is the law. And so when we approached COVID and what was happening in schools and with mandates and QR codes and digital passports and IDs, it was so clear to me, having no experience in medical freedom, having worked, I went to UCLA for undergrad and then Loyola Law School in Los Angeles, having worked on more employment law issues on behalf of employers, and then later for the individual employees, not really medical freedom. It was still very clear to me that the law was on our side and that it didn't allow for anything that they were trying to do. And so I just started talking about that online more out of desperation. Like, am I the only one seeing these things? And I would just read the laws. I would literally just read the penal code or the health and safety code or the Constitution or a U.S. Supreme Court decision. And very quickly, I realized that I was right. And also nobody else knew really what I was talking about. And so I just started talking more and more and louder about the law because I wanted to educate people to help them protect themselves. And then that really, devolved or evolved into facts, law, truth, justice, and your work, our work together with CHD, and now that's kind of how that's a very high level of how I got here.
Was that in 2020 or 2021?
So I was blessed enough in COVID to have my own small firm that I was actually shutting down because I had a baby. And when COVID happened, let's see here, we probably had COVID the New Year's 2019, December 2019 into January 2020. We didn't know it because there was no COVID, right, at that point.
Right.
And then, so it was 2020. I started the work really to get involved, but not officially. I think it was 2020. I can't remember now. It's all a blur. But I started to wake up in 2020. And then, LAUSD, you remember that call with Bobby and with Graham and Amy and everybody, Rita, Jessica, we're all on that call when LAUSD passed its mandate. And that was September 2021. That's when I launched FLTJ because I realized nobody else is going to file this lawsuit. And so someone needs to do it. And I made up a firm and there we went from there.
And FLTJ stands for Facts, Law, Truth, Justice, right?
Not my finest marketing branding moment, but like I said, the facts are important and the law is important. And if you really want to achieve, find the truth and achieve justice, like all of those things, I could not decide which one was more important. So I went the whole with all of them.
I like it. It works. It totally works. It totally suits you. And so, okay, so then you partnered with Children's Health Defense California we funded the lawsuit against LAUSD. And tell us a little bit about what LAUSD was doing at the time and why we needed to sue.
Well, remember, there were LAUSD is the second largest school district in the entire country. It matriculates over 600,000 students. And so tens of thousands of families. And LAUSD did a surprise meeting on a Thursday. No notice, nothing, and decided to implement a vaccine mandate, a resolution requiring all students. I think at that time in the beginning was 16 and older, then they reduced it to 12 and older. And I just knew that a school district can't do that in the state of California, where California is very pro-vaccine, very anti-exemption, as you know, because of FNF's newest lawsuits. And the reason why we have a very robust, unfortunately, health and safety code, a set of laws regarding vaccines and exemptions, vaccine requirements to attend school, that's preschool, daycare, and up, public and private, is because California is so pro-vaccine and they want it to be consistent. We have over 1,000 school districts, more or less at this time. So if every school district in the state could one day wake up and with no notice, regardless of notice, even if they give a month's notice, but if every school district could just add new vaccines or take them away to the set list of vaccines, which are currently 10, then we would have chaos in California. And I knew that. I mean, the health and safety code is super clear. You can either have it add a vaccine by passing a law, which would have gone through the legislature or the California Department of Public Health, but that would have gone through administrative procedures. And that would also require hearings, opportunity for, opposition and support testimony, data being presented, and they didn't do it. LAUSD had a surprise meeting and the board just voted to add the COVID-19 vaccine. We knew, you knew, Bobby knew, we all knew, if we let this happen, everybody's watching California. If California, the second biggest school district in the country, New York was already on that, barreling down that train track. If New York and California on each side, each coast, two biggest school districts, that Manhattan is the biggest school district, if they do it, everybody else is going to do it. They have the biggest litigation budgets. LAUSD, you and I and Bobby, CHG, all of us, PERC, we were up against a $333 million litigation budget. Obviously, New York's is more. So we knew that if they were able to do it, nobody fought back, all the other school districts would pass them across the country. They would piggyback on those litigations with those basically like bottomless buckets of funding. So we just knew we had to, just go almost immediately go in and ask the judge to hold off until we could decide the issue to see whether this was legal or not. And ultimately, the lawsuit, it's a lot of procedural stuff, but we ended up pushing out that vaccine mandate and they never took it to effect. So we all did that. And I'm a lot of families and children who are grateful to CHD and to you and all of us for leading the charge on that. Rita, Jessica, everybody.
You guys did a fantastic job. And so the issue in a nutshell really is that the schools were only allowed to have the 10 vaccines that were on the legislative schedule that are on the health and safety code. And so the 11th vaccine was the COVID shot. And so you knew that was illegal because there were only two ways to get it on the schedule for school. And it had nothing to do with a board vote, right?
Yes, that's it. The other big thing too, Alex, was, and this is a huge issue, as you know, in California, you've been hammering on it, is that if they did add a new vaccine, they also had to give back exemptions, the personal belief exemption. So it was a huge deal. It wasn't just about adding COVID. It was like, even if you're going to add COVID, then you need to add personal beliefs exemption. So that's why it was super important for us to tell people over and over and over again. Not only is it not legal for them to add this vaccine to the list without going through one of those two processes, but even if they do, an exemption needs to be added. A personal lease exemption needs to be added to any or included with any new addition to the vaccine schedule. They haven't done either. So we knew on both fronts that it was completely illegal what LAUSD did. It was just a matter of getting the information out to people to have them, hold back, so they didn't, end up,
Right.
severely disabling or killing their kids.
So there were actually two levels of it being unlawful. First of all, adding it, and second of all, mandating it, because the 11th shot is supposed to come with a personal belief exemption, right?
Correct, exactly.
So why did this case go relatively quickly? Because so many of our cases are really slow, but this one was pretty quick relative to the other ones. What worked?
Overall, it was about a year and a half. But what we did that was so effective is that we went in several times, about 4 or 5 times, and asking for temporary restraining orders to prevent the enforcement of the mandate. So we were getting small mini wins. And just by the way, we lost all of those, all of them. We did not get the restraining orders. However, within 24, literally every single time, within 24 to 48 hours of us going into court, the judge taking it under submission. That's what he says. I'm going to take your papers as if they've been submitted. I'm going to go to my chambers and I'm going to think about them, or call Gavin Newsom and Rob Bonta and everyone and Joe Biden and figure out how I'm supposed to handle this, because it's very clear the law is on their side and I need to grant this TRO. Successes looked different than what most people traditionally think of a lawyer winning in court. You see, the gavel banging and guilty or not guilty, or, $1,200 million, or, that's what people think. But, we never thought that was going to happen. It was the height of COVID. It was height of pandemic. We knew that these judges were government shills. And so we knew we were playing a game. And so we just kept going in, forcing the issue. Hundreds of people would come to us at the court. We had media covering this issue. It was one of the biggest cases in the country. And so those wins were different, again, looked different, but they were certainly wins for families who had no idea what was going on and were grateful and relieved that they didn't have to comply. Ultimately, again, it took about a year and a half, and it had to do with another case that was brought simultaneously, where we actually coordinated with the attorneys and we said, we'll fall on our swords. Thank God for you guys, for CHD, for PERC, who funded us. We'll go in again and again and again and again. And they made a deal with defense counsel that they weren't going to do any of the shenanigans, and they were going to wait for the hearing, for the trial. So while we were stalling for hundreds of thousands of dollars and hundreds of thousands of man hours, as you know, they were sitting, they didn't do anything, and they just waited to go straight to the hearing. And they got the ruling. So they kind of won, but all of our work is what allowed that victory to mean something.
Yeah, it was actually a really complicated set of cases that coordinated together, but we could see the cause and effect of every time you made a motion, LAUSD backed down a little bit, right?
Every time.
Every time. So we were having an effect the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
We were making them dance, in other words.
Yeah, 100%.
You mentioned something else I think people need to understand is that these aren't cases seeking damages. These are cases that are called procedural cases, just saying, hey, you're breaking the law, you need to follow the law. So there's not like a giant award at the end that anybody profits from. This is totally funded by people who donate to us, and there's no reward at all except that we win and we force the bad actors to be lawful again, right?
Right. And I know that. So at the end, there's what's called a civil Code of Civil Procedure 1021.5 motion for attorney's fees. So typically, in the United States and certainly in California, you can only recover attorney's fees at the end of your lawsuit if it's provided for in a statute. So like FEHA, the Fair Employment and Housing Act, has a section in that statute that says if you win on certain types of cases, then you can move for attorney's fees, make a motion for an award of attorney's fees at the end of your lawsuit if you're the prevailing party. Sometimes many people watching, I'm sure, have entered into contracts and there'll be a prevailing party attorney's fees, a provision or a term in their contract that says if there's a dispute, whoever the prevailing party is can receive an award of move after the trial or whatever settlement, move for an award of attorney's fees. Obviously, we were just suing LAUSD. There wasn't a contract between anybody. There was no statute that awarded. We under any statute that awarded attorney's fees, but there's a CCP 1021.5. There is a statute that says when you are litigating a matter of significant public interest and you have influence in achieving the result, not necessarily that you actually achieve the result, but that your work contributed significantly to the result that you wanted, you can move for an award of attorney's fees. Of course, the judge said, when I'm telling you like, oh, we were influential, I know because I have the receipts. I could show, and we did a timeline for the judge. This is the date that we went in. This is the relief we requested. This is the date that they held a special board meeting with no notice and pushed it back and pushed it back. So we have the data showing the vaccination rates were not going up, even though they were saying, oh, really, we're going to push back enforcement because people are complying and vaccination. And we're like, nope, this is the data. We know that they pivoted because of it was a very clear causal connection, but the judge still said that we didn't, that our work was really like inconsequential to what happened. And really it was the other lawsuit that achieved the win. But, God knows, the universe knows, it's never about money. We do this work for free and we try and do the best that we can, and are grateful for our sponsors and donors who can help us. For better or for worse, we do the work because we care and because it's important. So yeah, it's we have a bigger goal in the end. That's why we all do this, including yourselves at FNF.
Thank you. Yeah, well, for free or at nonprofit rates, something that you would not charge on the private market, the private client. So what other suits were significant for us when we were locked down? What other impact did we have with you?
We had an amazing one also in Orange County. And, I'm from Orange County, and I know that, a lot of people thought I brought that lawsuit. We brought that lawsuit together because it was, where I'm from, but that's not what happened. In Orange County and many counties, they stopped holding public meetings. Again, you guys, I don't have a problem with the end result. I have a problem if you get there by cheating or by lying, right? So if you want to hold a meeting and you want to hold a public meeting and 1,000 people come and they tell you how the lockdowns are ruining their lives and their businesses and their children are hurting themselves and committing suicide, or they're getting to, and then you present data and then you hold a public vote and you explain your position and then you vote to enforce, or continue the emergencies. Obviously, I'm going to disagree with it. Obviously, I'm going to keep fighting, but that's called due process. We have fundamental rights. We have constitutionally protected rights. So the U.S. Constitution, California Constitution, it's, actually in California, we have very strong privacy rights. That's where we get the right to abortion, to marry whoever we want. And so it was just so interesting how just hypocritical the state was, right? How they typically play both, speak out of both sides of their mouth. And so, it was an important lawsuit because Orange County, again, like many other counties, voted they weren't going to hold any meetings. They said it's too big of an emergency. There's death and dismemberment. There's nothing to decide here. We're just going to hold us in a perpetual state of emergency until the pandemic is declared over. But again, they were affecting our ability to travel, to shop, to work, for our children to go to school, people to get medical care, to go to the fact that we weren't even allowed to go to public meetings, to petition our government, to redress our grievances. That's a First Amendment violation. And so it was, again, the law was so clear, they weren't allowed to do that. And so that writ petition actually created a new procedure, a new process that Jessica really spearheaded with Rita, developed this writ procedure to, again, achieve. Actually, we got a win on that, very clear. The judge was like, you got to hold meetings. It doesn't matter what you say. It does not matter what you vote, but you have got to give people the opportunity to voice their opinions. That is what a constitutional republic is all about. That's what representative government is all about. You can't shut people out and suspend their fundamental rights. So that was another huge lawsuit. We got a win. They kicked the judge. They pulled him off of our case. assigned us to another judge they removed from family law court, which if anybody knows about law, has nothing to do with civil court. His first case in the civil division, and then he continued our hearing until Gavin Newsom ended the state of emergency and then told us our case was moot and dismissed our case. So big cases, Palicky case, Piedmont was a big case. Piedmont was our first, and it was the one that was the first one to strike down a mandate at Piedmont Unified School District, the first win in the entire country. So a lot of important work that we do, like you said, for free, but
or very reduced rates. Yeah.
It's
incredible what you've accomplished. Truly. And even our lawsuits, well, one lawsuit was with Tyler Bursch, so you weren't involved with that. That was against LMU, which was discriminating by vaccination status for housing. And then they had an armband policy.
Yeah.
And then Santa Clara University wasn't, they were kicking people out who didn't want to get COVID shots. And they were not giving tuition refunds. Can you tell us a little bit about that case, if you would?
Well, I was a part in the beginning. I was part Tyler Bursch. I misspoke in the beginning. He was involved. He was one of the attorneys. Joey Gilbert, also out of Nevada at the time. Dr. Gold. He was involved. They were involved. But LMU was literally gold armbands. That was like it was so mind blowing to see that we have this strong history of opposing these kinds of discriminatory policies and mistreatment of people based on, like, some people just their innate characteristics, their beliefs. I mean, honestly, no one wants to talk about it, but the Holocaust and the Jews, like, they had beliefs. The Nazis put disabled individuals, based on their innate features, put them in camps. And then now we have LMU and other universities putting individuals into separate dorms with their stars and literally their armbands and their numbers based on their sincerely held religious beliefs, whether it was Jewish, Muslim, Christian, whatever, that I sincerely believe that I can't get this. Oh, you're going into this camp, or I have a physical characteristic that prevents me from getting vaccinated. They're like, oh no. So it's just wild to see that.
And they literally gave those unvaccinated students yellow armbands.
Yeah.
And segregated them into different housing.
Yes, 100%.
It's unbelievable. I think people probably won't believe this even now.
I know. It's just, this work is very hard. This work is very hard because it's so painful to see people sacrifice their morals and their values and their principles to justify something incomprehensible. It's a very hard line of work. And especially after COVID, it's actually been, in my opinion, worse, because I thought after COVID, we realized it's just humanity. We're all humans. Nothing matters. It is literally humanity. We're born free, and we're fighting against these evil powers that be that do not care. They do not care about our race, our ethnicity, where we live, our religious beliefs. They do not care. They are here to dominate and squash and control us at any cost. And so the work has been, at least for me, I don't know how you feel, Alex, been even harder, because I thought in COVID we were so close. We were like there. We had really united. And it was pretty devastating to see how quickly they're able to throw kind of landmines in our way to, again, divide us and pit us against one another so that they can continue to do what they've always done to us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's still going on. And there are huge medical freedom issues today. It seems like Gavin Newsom does something worse for medical freedom every month in California for the past 6 months. So could you talk about the current medical freedom issues?
For someone that follows and cares about the law, again, it's really incomprehensible what's happening in California. Like, how does Gavin Newsom get to opt? We are researching this. Alix and I and our team, the Free Now Foundation team, are researching, like, how does one individual unilaterally get to opt its state into the World Health Organization after the country has pulled themselves out? Where does he get that authority? Obviously, I do not think that he has that authority. And how do we stop him from doing that? How do we stop someone from creating his own mini CDC? I mean, Bobby has done such tremendous work up at the, in the he's the Health and Human Services secretary, and his team. They've done so much work to really slow down and start to dismantle the vaccine policy of the country. And then we have Gavin Newsom unilaterally saying, "Oh no, no, thank you. We're going to opt ourselves out of that. We're going to opt out of that." Something that we were literally dying on the hill to support and endorse and amplify. Remember, Gavin Newsom was the first in the nation. We're going to be the first in the nation to have COVID-19 vaccine mandates. We're going to be the first in the nation to have a digital QR code passport, proof of vaccine, digital QR code to track and monitor us and confirm our vaccination status. Oh, no, we're not interested in that more. We're going to join the Western Alliance with Hawaii, Oregon, is it Washington? These other states. We're going to create our own CDC, and we're going to hire all the people that Bobby has determined are compromised, dishonest, like caught them in lies, caught them receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars from pharmaceutical companies and executives. Like, they're not there anymore, or who have voluntarily resigned from the CDC, from the NIH, because they don't want to get caught and to be outed publicly. Though that is the kind of riffraff, that is the kind of, like, those are the dregs of the medical, public health, arenas that Gavin Newsom has brought into the fold to create vaccine and public health policy in California. I mean, it's very dangerous. And it's, something that we're all working together to figure out how we can stop, because it's pretty, it is actually very alarming right now to be a parent, certainly a parent, but even just an adult living in California.
I agree. And so people like Susan Monterez, the director of the CDC, who's director for like a minute, has been brought to California.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do things like that mean for families in California? What's it like for a family to go to the pediatrician these days, or have to go to urgent care, or, give birth in a hospital? And what's it like for them, with schools, with all these mandates for vaccines in California?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I've realized over COVID is that we outsource our power constantly. We are born human. We are human beings, every single one of us, obviously, and we are born with innate powers, authority, and rights. And the government doesn't give us those rights. Our rights don't exist because there's a document somewhere, because there's a law or a statute or a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that says that we have these rights. We have these rights. All the documents, all the systems that we have created are, and I don't know if people know, it's like we have created these things to curtail and to curb the government, to keep the government in check. We're the ones in California specifically, I mentioned, our Constitution and our laws are very explicit about these government agencies are the product, are an instrument of our creation. And where they don't perform the way that we intend them, that we want them to, or as the document set forth, then we can destroy them. We can dismantle them, and we can remove the power. We're not even giving them our power. We're letting them exercise our power, because we obviously can't have all 34 million Californians in the California legislature. We vote people into office who are going to who say they're going to represent the will of the people, the majority will, and that they are going to be voting accordingly. When they don't, then we should remove them from office. And so I kind of forget what the question was, but how do people navigate in California? Is you have to become self-sufficient. I actually had a consultation with a mom with a daughter with unique, exceptional needs, and that she said that the doctors were trying to force her to get, her child vaccinated in order to receive services. And I'm like, get a different pediatrician. And she's like, well, how? And I'm like, I don't know. Well, just call them. Like, I told her, I asked her if I could share this story. And she said yes, because she doesn't want what happened to her to happen to anybody else. And I'm like, just call them. Just don't even return their calls anymore. She's like, what am I supposed to say? I'm like, actually, just don't return their calls. She's like, what am I going to do if they call me? I'm like, you're just not going to answer the phone. And she's like, well, then what's going to happen? I'm like, I don't know. Get a new pediatrician. She's like, how am I going to find one? I'm like, you're going to go meet with them until you find somebody that is, her daughter has a genetic condition and she's had severe reactions to vaccines. not the ones that qualify for medical exemption in California. Literally, your child has to become almost incapacitated or almost die in order to get a medical exemption in California, if you can even find a doctor who will still write the medical exemption, which they won't. I'm like, you're just going to find a doctor that you is, like on the same team. What happened is she had a good doctor in the practice that was allowing her to delay. And then a new doctor came in and said she had to, or she was going to get kicked out. And so, you don't have to have an OBGYN. You do not have to have a pediatrician. And you have to realize, and everybody must, to some degree have realized that they're lying to us. They're fear mongering us and gaslighting us. I had my children at home. It was very scary. You always hear about the bad births at home. And then if anything bad happens at the hospital, the first thing people say is, thank God you were at the hospital. Oh God, what would have happened if you were at home? Well, I don't know. Maybe if I wasn't in the hospital, they wouldn't have given me epidural to slow down my contractions, then Pitocin to increase my contractions, which caused stress on the baby, which then forced them to pull him or her out with forceps and then cause brain bleed. And you know what I'm saying? So we have to go back to our roots. I mean, I would listen to people in the beginning of the freedom movement and be like, you guys are crazy, but it's true. We don't need these systems. We can be self-sufficient. There are people now, the community is has grown significantly. There are doctors, pediatricians, immunologists, all farmers, all sorts of people who can help you work outside of the system, and homeschool moms. I think that public schools and even some private schools are the most dangerous place that you can have your children. You need to pull your kids from school. If it's public school, you got to pull them out. Private school, you have a little bit more of a say. You can watch them a little bit more. But there is crazy stuff happening in private schools as well. So why are we outsourcing? Why are we telling women having babies is not important? Being a mom is not important. I mean, that was like the biggest thing. That's the most important thing that we can do. If you can figure out a way to do that and work, then, more power to you. But we need to go back to the basics, and taking care of our children is the number one priority. Taking care of our health is our number one priority. Building up communities that are respectful and have integrity, those are our number one priorities. If we look at the administration right now, what's happening in Congress, all the things, I'm not going to say the trigger words on this thing, then you have to know that they do not care about us anymore, or they never have. They do not care about us. And so we have to exercise our authority in where it matters, in our homes and in our local communities. And that's what matters.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. So many of our listeners understand the relationship between health freedom and our personal and economic freedoms. It's the same principle. If you're one of our audience who's concerned about inflation, paper asset crises, and ongoing monetary crises, you may have already started accumulating gold and silver, or are considering doing so. There's no gold dealer we know who's better positioned to serve the freedom community than Mish International in Menlo Park, California. I'm one of the many happy customers who's purchased gold or silver in their showroom, or I've had it delivered through their secure courier service. They are true veterans who are honest, fair, and reliable, and so knowledgeable regarding all the choices of gold and silver bars and coins to help you choose the products that fit your goals and your worldview. The principal, Robert Mish, is world-renowned for his expertise in rare coins as well. Write down this number, 650-324-9110. That's 650-324-9110. And visit mishinternational.com. That's MISH international.com to learn more about this notable company. Really quick question before we get to AB 495. If somebody's at a pediatrician's office right now, there is a California schedule of vaccines that's 90 doses, including COVID shots, of over 17 vaccines. But the schedule required for school is a lot less than that. But is a pediatrician going to tell a parent the difference between those two schedules? What happens there?
Well, they're supposed to, right? They're supposed to, based on what came down from ACIP, they're supposed to be having I guess with the Hep B vaccine. But the what's coming out of Bobby's cabinet and what he's working on is that there's supposed to be a dialogue between parents and their pediatricians. they started that with a Hep B vaccine. And so that's kind of the theme that they are kind of pushing out. That's what should be happening, but we don't know, right? How are we going to enforce that? And I would just tell parents, you know, I, my children don't, Western medicine has a place. And Western medicine is amazing. We have surgeries, we have, therapies, we have things that can save your life. I mean, I'm not going to try and triage a broken, fractured arm at my house. I'm going to take my child to the emergency room and I am going to ask for help because I can't manage that at home. If you're at the pediatrician's office, I would ask why you're at a pediatrician's office. A well visit is not a well visit. It's a vaccine It's to get your child vaccines. It is not a wellness check or a well visit. So why are you at the pediatrician's office to begin with? And if you're there, I would just ask questions. I'm not, I was never an anti-vaxxer. The reason why I opted out of many vaccines is I simply asked the doctor, what is this for? And then she would tell me it's for this. And I said, okay, what's the likelihood of my daughter getting that? And you have to take into account where we live. I live in a very nice area with clean running water. I'm not being sarcastic or facetious. I mean, I don't live in Mexico. And when I went to Mexico with my daughter when she was 11 months old, I did get her the hepatitis vaccine because I did not want her to get hepatitis in Mexico, drinking some or eating some unclean water or food. So they just knew. I didn't say I'm anti-vax. I hate vaccines. I just said, what's this for? What's her likelihood of getting it? If she gets it, what could happen to her? And if she gets it, what could we do instead of getting her vaccinated? And the reason why I didn't want her to get vaccinated is because I didn't want her to cry. I just was like, this seems so wrong. This just seems so wrong. This seems so wrong. I don't want to do it. I don't want her to cry. I was just a big wimp. But they never mistreated me because I was just asking honest questions. And so then I would ask, well, if she got measles, what can we do? Well, this, that, and the other. And you live in a nice area, so there probably won't be complications because you have clean running water and you could get her this stuff and da-da-da-da. You can run baths, all sorts you have access to salves and all these things. So probably nothing will happen. And then what's the worst thing that could happen? This. What's the likelihood of that happening? Really slim to none. And then I'd be like, okay, well, let's just wait on that one. And it was just an open dialogue. Just asking questions. People need, again, go back to that innate power, authority. I knew that this was my daughter. This is my body. I'm the only one responsible for my daughter and my body and anything that happens. They will not be there if something happens to you when you're vaccine injured or your child's vaccine injured. No one will be there except for you to wipe the bottoms and change the diapers and clean the drool or whatever it is, or put the salve on the eczema that won't stop bleeding and cracking. I mean, no one will be there to hold you with the tremors. You're the only person. So that's the only opinion that matters. And so anyways, that's a very long-winded story. I think that we need to take our authority back and to become a little more independent.
I think that's really important, Nicole, for people to hear, because right now people are scared to go into the pediatrician's office if they don't want to get one vaccine or if they want to delay or they don't want any vaccines. They're really scared to go in. But what you're telling people is that they are open to dialogue as long as you don't position yourself as totally anti-vaccine when you're in there. Like, I am never going to get one. I don't know why you're trying to push these on me. That's the wrong approach is what you're saying. You're saying just start the dialogue that the CDC is advising all doctors and patients to have about the vaccine schedule. The funny thing about that dialogue is that I actually saw that, I don't remember which group it was, they did a study lamenting how many people are now asking questions of doctors and how the appointments are taking longer because of it. And I'm sorry, but that's the patient's right. It's called informed consent, and they need to ask those questions.
Right. And I would love to take the lawsuit that a doctor doesn't allow you to ask, have that conversation and forces you, denies you that information and forces you to undergo a medical procedure. This isn't just vaccines, right? This is anything. I mean, if you were to go, I can't really think of an analogy, and get some sort of surgery on your ACL, you would get 2 or 3 opinions and you would ask questions about that. And then you would go with the provider that you connect with and that answers your questions honestly and gives you the right feedback. Why is it any difference with the tiniest, most vulnerable people in our society? Why do they think that they get to just bully you? And by the way, if they bully you, then you can leave and you don't have to say, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to call the police. You just say, okay, no, thank you. I know, I recognize I'm not being glib. There are situations where child protective services can get involved. Again, I think that it is all, I don't even want to say it's just, you just need to act this way. I'm not, there are really messed up medical providers. There are very evil, vile people in the world. We've seen leaks, and I'll send it to you, but there's a leaked video, like an audio recording of a hospital going through with their pediatric staff talking about CPS, how they can actually get CPS or legally threaten to involve CPS to coerce parents to undergo treatments or procedures, including vaccines, even against their will. So I'm not telling you that that doesn't happen. I think the best place to start is to position yourself in a certain way, a demeanor, and just stay calm, and document everything so that you can, try and prove up your case.
That's great advice. Now, how about 5 minutes on AB 495? That was a law initially passed to help illegal immigrants establish residency so they could go to school, right? But tell me if that's true. And then how can that be misused, Nicole?
AB 495 has always been, okay, they're not going to say we're trying to kidnap children of undocumented immigrants, but AB 495 has been positioned as a law to help the undocumented immigrant parents prepare for worst case scenario. And they've spun it as, with all the things that were happening with ICE, right? Imagine that you go to work or you go to the hospital to receive medical care, or you go to Home Depot or you go wherever, and there's an ICE raid, and then you have not made any provisions for your children who are in school or at home waiting for you to come back, and you have nobody to take care of you, especially, people that have come across the border who don't have a network of family or friends that can help their children in the event of emergency. They really piggybacked on what was happening with ICE and all of those raids and said, we need to help parents of undocumented parents prepare for the worst. Okay, well, there's a caregiver's authorization affidavit that already exists. And what they tried to do was expand it. So literally anyone from a neighbor to someone with a family or mentor-like relationship with your child, to a teacher, which is huge because you guys see what's going on in California schools. Basically, anyone could take physical custody of your child, not legal custody, but physically take your child and then move them out of their schools and go and receive medical care without your knowledge or consent. So that's what the bill, that's how they tried to spin it, but it was just very clear that this was a huge problem, and it was not limited to children of undocumented immigrants. It was applicable to any child in this state.
So this could be completely misused, is what you're saying, and a child who's not undocumented could be claimed by a teacher, perhaps, as the caretaker. That doesn't give them guardianship, but the teacher could claim caretaker status, and then the child could get any medical care provided at the school and be subjected to other things.
We fought very hard. You were involved in that fight. We were able to change the language of the bill. Under the original bill, it was a relative, someone who, and the form is like 4 boxes. And they don't require proof of identification. They don't do a background check. They don't check your ID to make sure Nicole Pearson is signing this affidavit. You check these boxes, you put your name and address, you put the kid's name and address, you check a box that says either I attempted to contact the parents and they know about this, no proof, no confirmation, no cross confirmation with the parents, or I tried to contact the parents and I wasn't able to, so I'm just going to go ahead with this anyways. And then the author, Assemblywoman Celeste Rodriguez, was saying, well, they sign under penalty of perjury, and so that should be enough validation or verification to that this person is a legitimate person with the kid's best interest in mind. Like a human trafficker, a kidnapper, a pedophile cares about signing under penalty of perjury. By the time you come to pick up your child from school, let's say he or she takes your kid out of school at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11, lunchtime. By the time you come get your kid from school at 3 p.m. or at 6 p.m. after soccer practice, that person has fled the state, if not the country. They don't give a shit about the penalty of perjury. So it is still like that. However, they had two levels in the beginning. They had relatives could enroll and unenroll your child from school, and then also authorize medical care, and that a non-relative family member, which is a euphemism for a stranger, a non-relative family member could only help your child, with school-related issues, including school-related medical care. So still really bad. We were able to have them strike that non-relative family member. So now it's only a relative. But again, there's no proof of identification.
Right.
You don't know. I could say, I'm Nicole Pearson. I'm Sophia's aunt. I'm signing under penalty of perjury. They don't check my ID. They don't even check to see that my name is my name. They do not call the parents. They don't even ask Sophia. Again, because we're always trying to protect these groups, right? So we don't want to ask any invasive questions and, upset anybody. So they don't even know that I'm actually the person signing the name, putting my information, that's actually my information. And they don't prove that I'm the aunt. So it doesn't matter anymore. So it helps a little bit more, right? People will be less inclined, I think, to use this because that non-relative family member is out. But if you don't have someone in the doctor's office or the school who's checking to make sure I'm Nicole Pearson, okay, you are a relative, okay, you can take her out of school, or you can authorize this therapy, these drugs, these surgeries, even though the parent isn't here, then it kind of is the same result. So you're not wrong. I just want to be clear that non-relative family member language was taken out, but it really doesn't matter because they don't require proof of identification. So anybody can come and take your kid out of school, take your kid to a doctor's appointment, and it does happen. We can go over a couple of examples of that, but it does happen. This caregiver's authorization is out there.
It's so outrageous that it's going to be hard for people to believe that this could actually affect them and actually be legal under this new code that came out of AB 495. What can parents do to block this? Like preemptively, can a parent go to school and say, I am the caretaker and guardian of my child, and anybody who fills out this form is invalid?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So you can, again, what we're talking about earlier, you have to take control. You have to be on the offense always over yourselves, your health, your businesses, everything, and certainly your children. So just go. We have prepared a form at Facts, Law, Truth, Justice. We have a resource tab. I know that you have linked it. You've also sent it out to your followers. It explains what the law is, what it does, and what it doesn't do. So people are speaking intelligently about it, and it's so easy to dismiss people for misinformation. So we wanted to explain that to you, and then we gave you sample forms in order to tailor them to your child's unique needs, your family's situation, and you just say we do not authorize any affidavits. If anyone presents an affidavit, you can put whatever you want. Call the authorities immediately. You need to call me, but there's no one that is allowed to remove our child or authorize medical service on behalf of our child. Here's an updated emergency contact list. These are the only individuals that are allowed to, to take our child out of school. A lot of schools already have that. Most schools have that emergency contact list, but just update it with extra language at the bottom and at the top, just reiterating that these are the only people who have authority to remove your child from school. The only thing that's difficult is that, in terms of a medical provider, you can certainly put that with your child's pediatrician or their pulmonologist or your dermatologist. But if I'm a predator, I'm a pedophile, for example, and let me just do a quick example for you. Most children, it's at this point, I think it's about 80% of abuse to children happens through someone that they know. So whether it's a caretaker, a nanny, a tutor, a coach, a mentor, like we were just mentioning, or a relative, I think it's actually 88%. Most of it happens through someone the child knows, and someone that you know. So you are allowing your child to be tutored, or you are allowing the neighbor or the nanny to take care of your child, and they develop a relationship. And let's just say that this individual starts abusing your child. Well, with this caretaker's authorization, and by the way, this is why this is so serious. With this caretaker's authorization, that person can now, let's say they need to get your child an abortion, or they need to get your child STD medicine, or they need to get your child therapy, or let's say they want to drug your child. They can take them and you think they're taking care of them, right, for 4 hours while you're at work. And the child knows this person. A predator is grooms your child. They create a special bond with the child. They create inappropriate conversations and relationships and experiences with the child so that that alienates the child from you. So your child isn't comfortable. I've almost, over a decade worth of experience in anti-human trafficking. I've seen this happen, and hopefully people know about this more now. But there is access to your child, and they alienate your child from you, and then they can do things to your child. So this caretaker's authorization basically allows them to hide the tracks even more than before. And that's the most kind of generic example that I can give you that most of us are susceptible to. It's that person that you want to trust and you do trust and takes advantage of that trust. And before you're able to realize it, a lot has happened, which is, again, is why it's so important to have your children with you, and exercise dominion and protect your children and be with them at all costs.
That's right. Could an ex-spouse use this to their advantage?
Yes, and an ex-spouse could use this to their advantage as well. I mean, again, it doesn't confer legal custody, actual custody. It won't change any orders, but if again, when your husband comes to school and your child isn't objecting to the nanny or to the coach or to their father coming to school, half the time they're sitting back there, they don't even know that you're tendering this affidavit. He takes your child from school, or she takes your child from school, they're in the next state. You don't even know where your child is. And the school has not informed you because it says here, oh, I tried to contact my ex. Another thing we recommended is that, and they don't confirm, excuse me, I didn't finish my train of thought. But another thing that we recommend in our FAQ, our Facts, Law, Truth, Justice AB 495 FAQ, is that if there are any spousal support or child custody orders, that you put them on the record in your child's files. So we walk you through all of that. It's possible that can happen. It's possible your child won't say anything because it's someone that they know who's presenting this. And so they're not going to object. They're not going to be, throwing themselves on the floor. As people say, my child would never do that. Really? When it's the neighbor that they see every single day after school, and the neighbor comes and say, hey, mommy and daddy aren't able to pick you up. They asked me to come get you, and they remove your child from school. It's those scenarios that are going to happen. So again, in the FAQ, most parents who have some sort of a custody dispute have those records on file anyways, but we do remind you, and there's a checklist at the end of that package.
So a lot of our people are worried about vaccines, and I have to ask this final question. So could somebody take temporary caretaker status through this affidavit of your child and go get them vaccinated with impunity, even if there's like a court order for two parents who are divorcing to make joint decisions? Could that happen?
Again, if there's a court, if I'm the parent and I've removed the child from school and thrown the child in the back of the car, and I'm in Arizona now, it doesn't matter what the custody order says, right? The child will be vaccinated. I'm the dad. I walk into the doctor's office. Again, another important part of being a parent right now is having these conversations with your child. You're obviously not going to scare them, but you just need to say, mommy and daddy are the only ones that can look at you like this, touch you like this, take you to a doctor's office. If so, we need to start having those conversations. So it is possible that this happens, because just imagine your experience at a pediatrician's office. They're not asking you for your child support orders or your child custody orders. They don't know who you are. I mean, you say, and they see that the child is acting in a certain way, interacting with you in a certain way, but they aren't checking my children have different last name than I do, and they don't check, right? So I'm just the mommy and the daddy, and I fill in all the information, and you have to just think logically about how this is going to work. So you need to go put papers into place, have conversations with your children, and be with your children as much as possible. That's what parents do. We've changed what that looks like over the last 50 years, but that's what moms and dads used to do. So we need to go back to that, especially now when the dangers are so and the risks are so high.
I couldn't agree more. Wow, Nicole Pearson, thank you so much for being here on the Alix Mayer Show. I think you've shared some incredibly powerful information for parents. And as always, you're able to explain the law and policy in ways that every parent California can understand what it is and what they can do to protect themselves. And are there any last words you want to say to our audience?
Thank you for having me. I hope I helped. I know I talk a lot, so I hope it's helpful. I don't think I can really hammer home how important it is that we take back our inherent powers as human beings, and especially as parents right now. There's nobody that cares more about you or your children than you do, and you don't need anybody else. You don't, and it takes work. I am reading and I'm reading, but having a good community, a network that you can ask questions and share resources, it is so much easier than you think. And I know it's effort now, but imagine the effort of searching for your child for the rest of your life, or changing your child's diapers for the rest of their lives, or, you know, picking up the pieces of a child or loved one who's attempted to commit suicide. Or, I mean, you have to put in the effort now, but the benefits are life lasting, and they're just so much more important than any inconvenience you might be experiencing now. And it's the only comfort and the only safety you have is in exercising your own authority. So,
Amen to that. Nicole, where can people find you?
well, with FNF, on the FNF board, and all the work that you'll be doing, I'll be supporting and working with you on that. And also factslawtruthjustice.com, and then Instagram and X, there's Nicole Pearson. You can find me there having a good old time, like sharing information and my opinions, solicited and unsolicited.
We love it, though. We love everything you do on Instagram and everywhere else. So, Nicole, thank you again.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys so much.
We are so happy to have as our prime sponsor, Mish International, Northern California's acclaimed specialists in rare coins and gold and silver investments. Our friend and supporter, Robert Mish, is the same principal that started the company back in 1963, and he's still there every day with 63 years of experience. He has integrity, reliability, and fair pricing, whether you're buying or selling. When you have business to do with precious metals, you'll always be treated well at Mish International. Call 650-324-9110 and tell Robert that Alix sent you.